that you design something based on, what you know, or maybe a couple of friends or consultants or team members think it is, and what you design is, 45, 55, 65% aligned. And then when you deploy that business development strategy, 2 years later, you're like, you know what, it's not working the way I thought.
Too many leaders bet on assumptions, strategies, campaigns, frameworks, only to realize too late they've missed the mark. The truth? Leadership isn't about what feels right. It's about what works, what connects, what converts, what drives real impact. Bobby Umar gets it. A top 100 leadership speaker, Inc. magazine, 5-time TEDx speaker, and LinkedIn top voice. He's mastered the art of turning authenticity into authority. Welcome to the Design Rush podcast. I'm Kia Johnson, and today we're breaking down how to turn your personal brand into an industry-shaping force. If you're an agency owner, a business leader, or someone looking to step up, this conversation is for you. Got a story worth sharing? Email us at spotlight@designrush.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights that will help you scale your brand and business. Bobby, it's so great having you here with us on the Design Rush podcast. I hope that you are ready to share some of your signature wisdom with us today.
I'm very happy to be here, so let's get going.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I'm going to be getting stuck in some of these rapid-fire questions. I decided to give us a little bit of fun time here. First, I want to pick your brain a little bit, get to know you, get a bit of insight. So I hope you're ready for me.
Let's do it.
Amazing. Okay, so first question I have for you is, what fuels your work?
My why statement, which is basically there are lost, stuck, or unfulfilled leaders everywhere.
One top reason why brand leaders need personal branding.
Well, if you don't own your personal brand, then everyone else will own it for you.
Favorite travel destination?
Europe.
Name one defining secret to success.
Community.
And then the last one I have for you is, what are your top 3 important leadership qualities?
Authenticity, accessibility, honesty.
Love that. Authenticity, accessibility, and honesty. Beautiful. All right, so Bobby, thanks for playing along with the rapid fire. I've got a little bit of insight into you. So I'm going to be shifting gears a little bit. I want to actually get stuck into the real magic behind your work. And I want to kick off the question with, looking at your background itself specifically, right? So you have achieved remarkable success over the years. I mean, you've been recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers. You're a 5 times TEDx speaker, and you've built a personal brand that combines executive coaching, digital marketing, and storytelling. I mean, transforming leaders and companies across the globe. What is the defining moment in your career that sparked this meteoric rise and positioned you as one of the most influential voices in leadership and personal branding?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that often you'll see 2 things. One is having left the corporate space, diving into my personal brand, and figuring out what I want to do with my life to create that story and legacy. And so that was kind of the first piece where I started my whole career as a motivational speaker. But I would say that the other impactful piece was, I guess, the year that I did my first TEDx talk and launched a digital thought leadership strategy at the exact same time. So the day I remember that day, March 5th, 2011, I decided to invest in my digital thought leadership strategy, as well as on the same day I did my first TEDx talk of the 5 that I've done. And I think from there, things just really catapulted in a much, much more kind of 10x fashion, because I got my first speaking agent. I started traveling around the world. My fees and speaking and coaching kind of doubled. I started reaching more people on different platforms, and and things started to stick. I started to see what was going on. I started listening to trends, evolving as a person, as opposed to just being like a speaker. I mean, one of the things that happened was, I realized, no, I'm not just a speaker. I'm an expert in X, Y, Z, whatever that was, networking, personal brand, thought leadership. And then from that, I speak, I coach, I write books, I have programs, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's kind of was a big shift for me in terms of doing so.
You've actually worked with, countless businesses, obviously through your experience itself and agencies over the years. Can you share how your experience has actually shaped your understanding of what it takes to build a successful personal and organizational brand?
Well, I think that the biggest learning when it comes to investing and understanding your personal brand, whether you're an organization or an individual, is a lot of people spend their time not doing the deep dive work. So what they want to do, they want to skip steps. And the way I usually fashion it is that there's three parts of personal branding. There's discover your personal brand, there's design your personal brand, and then there's deploy or deliver your personal brand. That's what DYPB stands for. And so most of us are designing a personal brand. So we're working on the marketing assets, the materials, the logos, the websites. We have our plans, our strategies, our tactics, things we're going to do. Our content strategy, our relationship build strategy, our all that kind of sales strategy. And and then we launch. That's how we start to deploy and deliver. But what happens is that we don't really do the deep dive work to really truly understand, discover what that brand really is. And without that understanding, it's less effective. So what ends up happening is that you design something based on, what or maybe a couple of friends or consultants or team members think it is. And what you design is, 45, 55, 65% aligned. And then when you deploy that business development strategy, 2 years later, you're like, you know what, it's not working the way I thought. Or you design that digital marketing strategy, and 18 months later, you're like, you know what, it's not working the way I thought. But if you actually do the deep dive work into really understanding it, listening to people, doing surveys, getting real, honest information about you, both good and bad, about who you are or how you are in an organization, how people see you and perceive you and experience you, then when you design something, now it's more 85, 95% aligned, such that when you deploy it or deliver it in the marketplace, it's going to have way better resonance and way better success. And I think that investment in doing that is what only 10% people do, and everybody else wants to skip steps.
I think, people tend to, and I'm sure you've come across this as well, that when you say the words deep dive, they're thinking, oh, right, let me just do like a SWOT analysis here,
Yes.
and that's it, when
Right.
in actual fact, you're meaning that there's so much more to this. There's almost like layers that need to be peeled, when you eventually
Absolutely.
get to what it is that you want to get to, which is the big dream, the big vision, and how this is going to catapult everything moving forward and also maintain sustainability within the business as well, right?
Yeah, I think that, there's lots of aspects to personal branding. So, diving into values, interests, skills, personality traits, and particular stories, doing a survey of people that you affect and influence, how they perceive you, how they see you, gathering those stories, gathering those feelings, and both the good and the bad. That and also it's a bit of a vulnerable thing to do. You're putting yourself out there for people to criticize you. So a lot of people I know don't want to do I don't want to do a survey. I don't want to hear what from people, like, because that's the worst thing, because your personal brand is defined how specifically people around you experience you and feel you. And you don't want to know that, then how are you going to come up with something? And so I think that deep dive work is, yes, it's vulnerable, it's hard, it's time consuming, but I often tell people, are you willing to invest 50 hours of your time for 500,000 hours of fulfillment, impact, and legacy? And if you are, then you should do that deep dive work to try to create something that's what's better for you. So I think a lot of people skip that, and also there's a little bit of thought process. You have to take the time to think about it. You don't want to rush it. You want to take the time to think about what it is. Does it make sense? You might even validate it a couple of times. Ask for people what you think about this. Here's what I'm coming up with. Here's what we're trying. People try things all the time. I know, for a good example of TEDx, they were always, TEDx was always about ideas worth spreading, and then they launched recently, TEDx is about changing lives, and that only lasted a couple months. Now they've changed it to TEDx is about just creating change. And so it's interesting how they put it out there. It wasn't resonating with some people, so they changed it. Or Coca-Cola launches new Coca-Cola, didn't go well, they go back to Coca-Cola Classic. Good, that's what they should do, because it wasn't resonating. So I think all that type of stuff, have to continually listen to your audience, listen to your clients, your customers, and see exactly what they're thinking and feeling.
So, in terms of vulnerability that you're speaking about, would you say that that's actually one of the common challenges that you've noticed that agencies face when they're trying to establish their authority, in a sort of crowded market, that they don't want to get themselves into that exposure level? And what, if so, would you say that there are any additional challenges that they would be facing in this scenario?
Well, vulnerability is just one of many challenges I think brands and agencies will have. Vulnerability, I'd say, is very hard, because I think most people, first off, there's a large chunk of people who can't even share content or share stories out there. There's a smaller group of people that can't be personal and vulnerable, and then from that, there's even a smaller group of people that can't be very deep and vulnerable. So how do you figure that stuff out? I think that as you understand what your brand is and what your objective is to grow as a brand or agency, you have to understand what kind of stories are out there that are going to help you set yourself apart. So vulnerability, I think, is only one aspect that I think a lot of people need to focus on. The other aspects, of course, are, listening to your customers and coming up with the right strategy. How do you reach them? How do you start conversations with people? How do you invite people to feel empowered and included as part of your community or network? I mean, there's lots of different things at play here, but I definitely think vulnerability is one of those ones that I'm actually, putting a lot of my energy behind to help C-suite folks and brands and agencies to get better at, because I've always been big on storytelling, but now I'm like, okay, how do you tell vulnerable stories? Because I'm very open about talking about the things in my life. Like, I talk about my challenges with entrepreneurship, the loneliness of that. I talk about challenges with binge eating and weight loss, body image. I talk about challenges with kids, and now the newest thing I'm talking about is, aging parents and neurodiversity with my kids having ADHD or autism. So these are things that I'm talking about openly and very vulnerably about these things, because I think it connects me with people, it creates trust, and I think that there's something around that bonding of the human experience that we're all part of, no matter where you are. I mean, look, every single agency is run by humans who have human things going on in their lives, and if you are able to access that and are able to share that with the world, it's going to actually be beneficial to you and your agency.
That's so true. And also would actually help you to stand out, in that crowded space as well.
Sure.
Because you would be bringing that uniqueness to it as well. Whether it is that everybody is reflecting in this way, everyone would have their own personal story to tell, or their own sort of brand personal story to tell. So it would always resonate. Amazing. Bobby, you're actually well known for helping leaders craft their personal brands and become thought leaders in the industries. So can you also explain why it's important for business and agency leaders to actually be those thought leaders and brands themselves?
Well, I mean, look, there is the corporate brand and then there's the individual brand, right? So the corporate brand certainly espouses values and stories and memories and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and how we position ourselves as thought leaders and as brands out there is going to influence every single aspect of our life. So, like, my brand is part, and like this whole idea of work life balance. But the truth is, it's life balance. You are the thought leader and brand of your life, of which the company is part of it. Absolutely. So my company, and I have three companies. My three companies are part of my brand, but there's also my brand as a coach, as a speaker, my brand as a father and a son, my brand as a friend, like my brand as a community leader or a digital influencer out there, or someone who's for political and social justice. So these are all part of my thought leadership brand, and so I think that you have to understand that it's bigger than you are the biggest part of the brand that's out there, and if you do a good job of it, it's going to feed into everything else you do. So if I have a strong thought leadership brand individually, will it impact the brand of my company? Absolutely. In fact, it also increases, studies show that it increases the trust of your organization. If you're putting stuff out there, it leads to more business. It has lots of ways to 10x the results of what you're trying to do out there. So for me, investing in that and understanding what that is goes a long way.
Definitely. And I hear you 100% on trust. It's such an important factor. Can you share the first critical step that every agency or business owner must actually take to start their journey towards becoming a recognized thought leader? What would that step be?
Once you're clear on the personal brand, because what happens is you go on the personal brand journey and then you build it up to become a thought leader, right? So what are we doing in that process? The first process is personal branding, being clear on what that is. Then we figure, okay, now what is the objective? What's the goal? What do I want? Right? Do I want to do I want to do more? Do I want to build get more business leads? Do I want to do more speaking and talk about the company? Like, what exactly are you trying to do? So once you have that objective, then we look at that plus a target audience. Who's your key target audience? And then put together a plan to get there. Now that plan could be lots of different things. It could be content strategy, it could be relationship building, it could be launching a program, a book, a TED talk, all those different things you might want to do that's going to elevate what you're doing. But I think that most of us forget about the first steps, which is really about the personal brand, the objective, and the target. Because once you have that, then you can start putting together a plan. I think a lot of people, they jump they jump ahead and start doing things without having that steering of the ship of where they want to go. But what you should do is look at the end goal in mind and kind of reverse engineer how you're going to get there. Like, for example, let's look at client acquisition, right? A lot of people out there, and this is a really common thing with brands and agencies, content strategy, great. Well, what are you doing to get clients? Right. So people think you put the content out there and you get clients, but that's not how it works. Like if I'm going to become your client, I'm going to have gone on a call with you or have engaged you or had a message. And so you have to, reverse engineer back. Content strategy is one part of the system. But in terms of acquiring clients, reverse engineer back how that works and how they get there. And then you can design the process or system that's going to work for you to build your business.
In your experience, what is the biggest mistake that you would say executives make when they first try to position themselves as thought leaders?
Good question. Well, the biggest mistake is typically that they don't start, right? So a lot of them are too afraid to start and they don't even act on anything. So if you look at data like on LinkedIn, for example, the number of active users of the billion that post content regularly is like 8%. So there's 92% of people who are just not putting stuff out there at all, right? So I think even the starting piece is very, very difficult. And then I think the second piece that comes up is they post things that are maybe not they don't know how to do it effectively, right? So they don't ask for help on how to do it more effectively. They'll put it out there. I mean, the most common post people say is, "Oh, our company had the latest results of third quarter, and we're really excited about that. We're very proud." I mean, that's great, but that shouldn't be the main. Like, don't just talk about your company results and a new employee. Like, you got to start telling stories and sharing insights about the industry and the things that you are known for, and that's what's going to make a big difference. So I think that they often do it the wrong way. They just talk with their company when really they should be doing is talking to their target audience.
And then that would actually be a way for them to just get stuck completely into it. By avoiding these pitfalls is just to be getting straight into it in the first time around. But making sure that obviously what you're putting out there is completely resonating, with your audience. It's almost like this intention. It's like you have to do it with intention, right?
Yeah, intention, purpose, targeting, but also the ability
Right.
to change and evolve it, right? I mean, I think that one of the things I'm really big on when it comes to content strategy and any strategy is the 80-20 rule. 80% is aligned and targeted and focused on what you're trying to do. The other 20% is experimental, personal, trying different things, seeing what sticks. Like, because you never know, what's going to happen when you do that. And so I think having a little bit of that experimentation will go a long way to helping you learn to evolve. I mean, I've evolved as a brand and as a business over the years because I've been able to listen to people and see how things have shifted in terms of whether I was a speaker or a coach or even my programs.
Now, you've also worked with leaders across a variety of industries, and as mentioned before, you've helped many craft their personal brands into very powerful strategic assets. So, from your experience, what specific actions or qualities do both agency owners and business leaders actually need to focus on to evolve from like simply delivering projects to truly becoming strategic partners for their clients? And you have touched on a couple, but if we can expand more.
Yeah, I think one of the things to think about is, are you following the conversation or are you driving the conversation?
Right.
Right? So are you putting things out there that are driving the conversation, challenging the status quo, coming up with new ideas? There's a whole idea of thought leadership, which is broken down in kind of three areas, which is, people, followers, connections, which is like influence. Then there's what we call the coming up with new innovative ideas, which is what we call subject matter expertise. And the third part is really about the communication and the voice. So like speaking, writing books and all that kind of stuff. And so what are you doing to really drive the conversation? A lot of people, there's a lot of people out there who are influencers, but they're not subject matter expertise. There's other people who are subject matter experts, but don't have influence. So how do you create something that drives that conversation? I think that to me goes a long way. The second thing I'll say that's really important is having more than one touch point, right? So, if you are an agency, great, you have a content strategy. Are you going out to events? Are you speaking? Are you showing up on media? Are you creating? Are you writing? White papers? And are you doing videos? Are you doing live? Like, what are you doing to get to multiple touch points out there? I think that goes a long way to helping you stand out. And then the third piece is, are you willing to listen to change when things are coming down the pipeline? Like, how would you navigate that and realize, hey, you know what, we're going to shift what we're doing. I often tell people personal branding should be revisited every year or two because things change, things evolve. And so are you listening? Are you listening as an agency in terms of, what's happening and how it's going about? Because, I think one of the things that I remember in the earlier days, when social media first came out, agencies were doing traditional marketing, right? They were focused on print and TV and things like that. And now, it's changed. And we had to change because the world has changed. Now, do we do print or ignore print? I don't know. But the point is, you have to understand how the world is changing. I changed when the world became digital because in my early days, I was an expert in networking. I wrote a book on networking. I taught about networking and I talked about how to build relationships at events and in the workplace. And then when the digital came, I had to learn how to do that so I could teach that to people because most people now have to learn how to network on LinkedIn, how to network on Instagram and other platforms because they need to understand how to do that.
What's one example of a shift you've seen in agency client relationships where like an agency was able to establish themselves as a long-term trusted advisor rather than just a vendor? Do you have an example to share?
Well, I think for me, the best examples are the ones where you actually see a partnership develop, right? Where one agency helps the individual back and forth. And one of my I'll share an older experience, which was when I worked in brand marketing back in the day. I worked at Kraft, which was marketing cheese, and we had several agencies that we worked with. But what I found was the company was kind of a bully and just told the agency what to do. So the agency came with ideas like, yeah, no, 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 like, this is what we want. And so they created the ad like that. But then when I worked at Unilever, which was the Dove master brand, the campaign for real beauty, I found that with the agencies, we were partners and they would suggest ideas, we would suggest, and we would listen to each other and come up with something amazing. And what I found was true marketing insight that evolved, learned, and grew the business of what we're trying to do. Even the Dove campaign for real beauty was founded on the principle that was new and innovative about, okay, let's just focus on the idea of real beauty. And we weren't even selling product. We were just selling the idea and the concept, which still led to great business growth. So if you're able to collaborate and help each other grow and get better, to me, that was very unique back in the day, but even now, I think that's an important piece. And even for me, when I work with clients, I mean, in some ways, I'm an agency of sorts too, because I'm teaching them how to build personal brand, thought leadership, things like that. But for me, like I like to collaborate with them. Let's do this together. Let's find ways where we can support one another. We even mention each other in the things we're doing. We're taking people on the story with us, and to me, that's where if we do that, then they're more likely going to want to work with me on a long-term basis versus just doing the one-off. Yeah, thanks, Bobby, for launching this thing for us. Okay, now we're going to be on our own. Yeah, so that collaboration, partnership piece, and supporting each other, I think, goes a long way.
Can you share an example where a strong personal brand directly influenced a business's ability to actually win a major client or a long-term partnership? Whether it's old, whether it's new, any examples there to share?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say that, I mean, my entire life has been like that. So, so for me personally, having a strong brand, I mean, people often say, Bobby, how did you get 5 TEDx talks? Well, the first 4 TEDx talks came in 2 years, over a period of 2 years. And it's because people approach me because they're like, wow, we love you, love your work, and we love what you speak about. Can you come in and do a talk? And so those ones, people just approach me. I never pitched anything. So I think that, to me, that goes a long way. And then I would say the other thing is that when I worked with a client to have a really clear brand around who she was and what she was trying to do, 2 things happened. Number one, she started getting offers from outside, her work, which were aligned with what she wanted to do and where she wanted to go. And number 2, the company that she currently worked for saw what was going on and saw she was becoming a valued asset, and now worked with her to give her what she wanted so that she would stay. And so that was a longer term plan. That we spent that was like 12 to 18 months of getting to where she wanted to go to position herself in one very specific, unique, niche way, because she wasn't seeing that in the workplace. But then it worked out because she got the offers, and both outside and inside, and chose to stay, which was ultimately her original goal. So that's something that worked really well for her, and that's something that most people can do if they do the work. But you got to play the long game too.
Yeah, you do. You definitely have to play that long game. And I think some people get kind of like stuck in this, especially because we live in a world where everything is instant, everything is now. When it comes to strategy and when it comes to building and sustainability, that is a long-term goal. So it's something that needs to be planned methodically. It needs to be, hashed and then rehashed. And then as you said, now it evolves all the time. So you need to relook at every year and see where can we build, where can we take away, what can we do, how has it changed? Definitely. So you were speaking earlier about authenticity. I mean, it plays such an important part in like building trust with your clients, right? How can leaders ensure that their personal brands align with their business's core values? And we spoke earlier about, it being that you're working for an agency, you're working for a brand, but you're a person too. There are human beings behind this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the personal brand experience particularly dives into values, right? So the values are a core part of our being and who we are and how we operate. And so you have to look at those things and see kind of how they align with what you're currently doing with your agency or your business or your company. And so that to me is the ultimate thing to kind of look at. And if there is a disconnect, we need to understand what that disconnect is and why it's there. Now, a lot of reasons why companies and agencies and big brands don't invest in their employees learning personal branding is because they're afraid that if they dive deep into the personal brand piece, they will see that some employees will see that they're not aligned and will want to leave. Well, the truth is you want them to leave because they're not aligned, right? So, yeah, because if a company has 7 values and then you have your own 7 values of which only one aligns, then maybe that's not the right place for you. Or if you're an agency owner and you start to see your values are different, then maybe you might want to adjust the vision of the agency to more align with what you're doing. But the truth is, if there's misalignment, then you either want to leave or you want to adapt and change things, right? So I think that to me is an important piece that a lot of people don't want to do. But I think that's kind of where it starts. You have to really understand the values piece, and then also look at what brings you joy and fulfillment and purpose. And and how do you find that at work, and how do you find that with your company? Because I think you have to be able to find that, and there's different ways to find it. You can find it with the people that you work with. You can find it with the clients that you serve. You can find it with the impact that you have, right? So, I go to use example. I mean, the impact I felt selling cheese versus selling the idea of real beauty, there's no comparison, right? The idea of selling a product, a widget, versus now helping people find clarity, purpose, and legacy, or helping them at a TEDx talk and get and achieve their dreams. It's way better for me in terms of what I'm doing. So you have to think about that and try to reframe it in a way that's meaningful to you.
But that's the thing, right? It becomes so self-fulfilling at the end of the day when you're there and you're aligned with your passion, with your goals, and it's in the work that you do, it's the air that you breathe, it's the life that you live. And it just becomes like, I guess, it's a breeze for you to go through life. It just becomes this amazing journey.
Yeah, I mean, once you find something that gives you purpose, joy, fulfillment, and you see how it's going to impact the world. I mean, and you can see how it's going to help you the rest of your life. You want the rest of your life to start right away, and you get very, very excited about it. So, like when I launched my business brand, I was very excited about it, and I've been riding this train for almost 20 years. And so, yeah, I think it's a very, very exciting piece, no matter where you are or what type of business you're running.
So you've mentioned before that many people struggle with self-doubt, even those who are highly successful. And I have actually seen that you spoke in a little snippet in a little video about some of the things that you struggle with. You even mentioned it now while we were chatting earlier on. So you have touched on some of your personal experiences, but I want you to kind of like dig deep, I guess. If you can share maybe a very profound personal experience where you actually faced that self-doubt in your career.
Well, I think self doubt happens all the time. In fact, I would say that even now I had self doubt, this year. So it's not like it goes away. Self doubt happens all the time. So I mean, an example I'll give you right now is, look, I do different things, right? So whether I'm speaking to a company or at a conference, or whether I'm working with people at the high levels with my TEDx programs, or helping people at the lower levels with my digital, communities. Sometimes, people leave or reject, and you're like, oh man, okay, maybe, did I charge too much? Did I charge too little? How do I feel about myself? And so these things come up all the time. So I think it's a very common thing for all of us that we struggle with this. And I think the first thing to remember is that we are human, and this is going to happen to all of us at every level. In the beginning stages for me, there was certain issues, and now at this stage, 20 years later, there's still things that come up and other ones that are not so much. But I think the difference though is that my veneer out there or here talking to you is certainly very confident and very articulate, eloquent, and hopefully a little bit charming. But I can tell you that there are moments when I'm with my coach or when I'm with my wife where I feel very doubtful, and I share my fears and my doubts about different things that are going on in my life. So I think initially it's a very common thing all the time. And there are many profound moments, I would say, but I think that one of them just happened recently, which was basically in the fall, around September of last year, and I I remember this because I was on a call with somebody who was consulting me on a bunch of different ways to improve what I'm doing, but I just felt overwhelmed. I just felt overwhelmed with everything. He gave me a list of a dozen things, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, I felt like everything I was doing somehow in that moment, I felt everything I was doing was a failure. And then I got on a call with one of my trusted partners in my business, and like kind of my second in command, and I just broke down. I started crying. I was like, oh my god, like what the hell is? And I was like, what's wrong with me? And I'm overwhelmed. I can't believe this. And it just really shook me. It shook me. And after doing so, how I coped with it, well, I talked to her for like probably 2 hours. Then I called another trusted advisor and I talked to him for about an hour and a half. And then I went to my wife, and pretty soon I have a community, which is great. So I started talking to my community, and within about 3 or 4 days, I came up with a plan to address most of those things. Okay, what am I going to do about it? And I started specifically targeting those issues, of which one started getting resolved right away, another one a little bit more longer term. But I felt better because I had community, and I had an action plan that was specifically designed to deal with the stuff that I was feeling. And so that resilience comes by having a support community, by having a plan in place, and also knowing what the issue is. Because one of the hardest things in the world, whether it's a relationship or a business, is not knowing what the issue is, right? So if your partner doesn't talk to you, you don't know what's wrong, or your company doesn't talk to you, you don't know what's wrong, it's very, very, it's very difficult to know how to fix yourself. So, or to fix things. So having those conversations and understanding those things, I think, goes a long way.
I feel like there's almost this mirror effect happening when you speak about, the personal side and you speak about the business side, but it's like a mirror of each other in essence. And you would need support in both ways, and it just merges into one at the end of the day. What I actually would like to know from you, Bobby, is, agency leaders or business executives are actually feeling uncertain, or they're like doubting the capabilities. You spoke about having a support system, and the fact that you're able to sit with that and then come up with a key plan to address the concerns that came your way. Now, for a agency leader or a business executive who's feeling this way, what's one action that they can take immediately to actually start building their confidence and move forward with conviction?
Well, I think starting by doing a self assessment, like what are your strengths? What are you awesome at? What problems do you solve? What are the 5 or 10 questions that people ask you all the time that because they know you have the answer? To me, that gives you a really good sense of where your strengths lie and what people seek you out for. And I find that to be quite validating and empowering to think about those things. And then the second thing is, who are the people you want to talk to that will give you the advice and support that you need to feel better, because that's also validating. I find that when you answer those questions, and when you have the people that you think about that you want to go to, it's very empowering to then help you think of strengths. And the other thing I like to look at is if you ever have testimonials or recommendations or reference letters, things like that, go read them. Like they no, they feel really good. Like I have this folder in my Gmail called motivators. And anytime someone sends me something really, really nice or heartfelt, or that I put it in there,
Yeah.
And my coach team tells me, Bobby, go read your motivators. So then I'll go in there and I'll read. I'll pick one from like 5 years ago and I'll read it. Oh yeah, okay, cool. And just
It's like
it
a
definitely.
validation, yeah.
Oh yeah, it definitely helps you feel. It could be something completely unrelated to what you're going through, but I tell you, like, it's incredibly helpful to ground yourself, to reframe, and to start working on that plan to give yourself more resilience to move forward.
Can you outline 3 most actionable steps that a CEO or agency leader can take to foster a resilient mindset within their teams when they're faced with like unexpected challenges or a downturn in business?
Well, I think the number one thing that CEOs should have is a plan. Like, what is the plan for when these things happen, when struggles happen? What is the plan? What are the contingencies? Having a plan in place that you can look at and document and kind of look and see. Here's the different steps. Those are the things that are going to help you formulate what you need to be able to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having a clear check-in. What's the check-in for us to like be open, have a check-in and say, listen, we're gonna do today. We're just gonna have a check-in. We're not even gonna talk about business. How are you doing? How are you feeling? We learned this during the pandemic, right? Having those check-ins emotionally go a long way to fostering better resilience and to let people know it's okay. You're not alone. This happens to all of us, and we've all been there. And I think that to me goes a long way. And then the third thing I would say is, what's the follow-up? You can't just have the meeting. You can't just review these things without following up, right? The worst thing you can do is you can forget about your employees, forget about your team. And, like we had that one time and that was it. No, you have to actually, have a bit of follow up to make sure that, things are progressing, people are being heard, and the action plan is being implemented.
So, how do you keep your personal resilience high during tough times? I mean, would you say it's in terms of like your support system, is that a way that sort of comforts you and is able to push that resilience through?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of things that I do, and I've kind of built a lot of systems, but I think I
Yeah.
alluded to the first one in the beginning, which was my why statement. So my why statement is, there are lost, stuck, or unfulfilled leaders everywhere. And what that means is, everywhere I go, I meet people who feel lost in their career, stuck in their jobs, or unfulfilled in their work. And some people feel all three, some people feel one of those three. But what I can tell you is that by knowing that pain point and knowing how people feel, it allows me to understand who I serve. But the best part about my why statement is that it fuels me because it makes me a better speaker, coach, and business owner. It makes me a better father and husband, a son and friend. Because my parents, like for example, my parents are aging now and they're starting to feel lost. And so as a son, I'm stepping up to help them out. If my kids are feeling stuck in a relationship, my teenage daughter has a lot of friend drama, I can be there to help with that. If a client comes to me and says, hey, listen, I'm not getting the results I want, I'm feeling a little bit, frustrated about it, I'm not sure where to go, then okay, great, let's dig into this and figure out what to do. So I think for me that has been the best thing I can do. The second thing is having a support system. So, like I said, I have my family and friends. I have a coach. Actually, I have two coaches. I have my support. I have communities. Like I'm part of 3 different communities. One that I run and 2 that I'm part of, and those communities provide me support and solace. Like that's why I think execs need to be part of mastermind groups and have a coach and all that kind of stuff, because it's good to have the sounding board, have that accountability, have that support system, have the crowdsourcing, all that different stuff, to me goes a long way to helping you, become resilient. And then I'd say the third thing around resilience is, I'm going to say health related. I struggle with, eating well, but when I do eat well, it works better. When I get more sleep, it works better. You've seen me drinking lots of water already. When I drink lots of water, it helps. And I think that because the health piece is a very interesting and profound insight for my life and my business. And what I've learned is that a better me is a better everything else. So if you focus on your health and you do that, then everything will get better. And that's why you need to put energy into doing that. That to me is one of the key aspects of resilience, is health.
So, Bobby, where do you see the future of personal branding in the next 5 years, especially for business leaders and agency owners?
Well, I think personal branding is something that's always going to be there. It's something we're always going to work on. I mean, in the early days, 15 years ago, personal branding, most people were like, "What is that? I'm not a bar of soap." And like, no, that's not what we're talking about, guys. And then so people didn't understand what it was, and then there was people who understood what it was, but they're like, "Why is it so important?" And then there's the third group. They're like, okay, now how do I do this? But now what we've seen is the percentage of people who say I'm not a bar of soap is like much lower, and now the majority of people are saying, now, how do I do this? They all get the importance. They're going to kind of do it. So I think that's a big shift now. But I also think now, in the future, the next 5 years, I mean, with the advent of social media and digital technology and AI, I think that people are going to try to figure out, well, how do I create an authentic personal brand that's unique to me? I mean, do I create an AI avatar, and how do I make sure it's brand aligned with who I am? So all these questions are coming up. So I think there's going to be a huge issue with trying to figure out personal branding in the digital and AI age that is unique, authentic, and creates the results that you want. And so we have to kind of figure that out as we go along. Because look, we don't know everything about AI, we don't know everything about technology, and things are changing rapidly. We're already seeing rapid change already in the digital environments, and there's been news already in the news very lately about certain things like TikTok and Facebook and Meta and Twitter and whatever. So how do we navigate that? So I think that's where it's going to be a bit of a struggle for folks. I think most people are going to be aligned to, yes, personal branding is important, and yes, okay, now I'm working on how to make it stand out. But now they're going to be inundated with, well, which platform, which tools, how does AI come into play, and how do I also get through the muddle of fake misinformation, disinformation, spam, bots. It's to me going to be a very big challenge for a lot of folks and a lot of agencies to try to figure that out.
Yeah, definitely. I want to move over to storytelling. I mean, you're a storyteller first and foremost, right? And it's one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. And when it comes to closing big deals, how can agency leaders actually use storytelling to engage potential clients on like a deeper emotional level and actually increase their chances of success? You've spoken before about there being a partnership and that is one of the most important key factors. So, would you say that that would also increase your chance of success?
Well, I think there's different ways to incorporate storytelling in the client acquisition experience, right? So I think the
Right.
first one is in the beginning to, share client stories, right? So sharing a client story about something you dealt with, I think goes a long way. So I think that shows, hey, look, here's a story of me working with somebody. Here's because when you're telling a story, you're sharing your values, you're sharing what you believe in, you're sharing the things that you care about, and so that story will, ingratiate yourself to the person that's a potential client. The second thing, though, is that sharing a vulnerable story allows you to invite that person to share their own stories. Because at the end of the day, if you want to work with a client, you also want them to share their stories because you want to understand them and what they're going through so that you can identify those pain points, identify those bliss points, and try to address them with what you're trying to do as an agency to try to work with them. And once you're both sharing stories, now what's happening is you're creating more trust, you're creating a greater connection. And so that's where, to me, storytelling becomes incredibly impactful. Now, when you move to the sale part, then what ends up happening is typically there's going to be gaps and objections. So then again, that's where stories, I'll share a story of, my own objection to something that I invested in, or I'll share a story of a client who had an objection and how we managed that and what the end result was. And so when you tell those stories, it's again a way to validate and to create that connection and get them over the hill without them feeling, either provoked or attacked, or having to defend themselves, or a wall goes up, right? Because we're on this journey together. And this goes back to the collaborative piece, right? So if you talk about the collaborative partnership piece and the long-term piece, and you tell the story that way around, here's an example of one of my favorite clients to work with, and here's why it's so great. Again, you're telling the client, here's what I care about, and here's what and also at the same time, you're telling them what you probably will want to care about or should care about, and in doing so, will want to work with us.
Mm, love that. What's one example from your own career where storytelling's actually had a significant impact on your business relationships or your deals? Do you have one to share?
Well, I remember doing I was called in to do a speech for an engineering consulting firm, And typically when I do keynotes and workshops, I have kind of a standard process for how I want to do things. But one of the things that they had said in the client conversation was, "Hey, listen, like we love the fact you're a former engineer, and it's an engineering firm, so we like that." And I asked the question, why'd you pick me? I always ask the question, why'd you pick me? So, well, I saw your profile, and I I like some of the stories you told, and so I'd like to see more stories. And so I decided in that moment, you know what? Let me listen to my client a little bit more here. And I said, look, okay, here's what I propose. Instead of doing this kind of layout of going through topic X and case study and data and topic Y case study data, how about let me give you an agenda. And I gave him an agenda of stories. And instead of having typically what I do in a keynote, I'll tell one main story and then maybe one or two other stories, like smaller stories. But in this proposal, I said, you know what? I'm gonna give you like 6 to 8 stories across the entire board. And he's like, you know what? I love this. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try it. So I tried it out, and oh my god, it went amazing. Like uh, better than I ever thought it would. And next thing you know, 3 or 4 different people came up to me saying, listen, I want to work with you, and I want to bring you in to do this, and maybe you can help us in this area. And I was like, okay, great, because it led to more corporate training and more individual coaching and consulting. Um, and so now what I do is whenever I have these things, I'm definitely putting more stories in, and I always vet it by the client first. But to me, like they definitely like the stories. They definitely like both personal and professional. The other thing too is I put in a lot. I ended the entire speech on a personal story with me and my wife, and a health struggle, and even though it wasn't engineering related, they loved it. And so I think that was very profound for me, because now since that time I've definitely incorporated far more personal storytelling. And now one of my big things is I'm really big on teaching C-suite folks vulnerable storytelling and how it's going to transform their brand and their business.
Bobby, we were chatting earlier about generative AI and automation, and obviously becoming very central to business operations and impacting personal branding and thought leadership. So, what I want to find out from you is what's one actionable way that agency leaders can actually use AI today to enhance their thought leadership and increase their visibility in their industries?
Well, first off, let me just say I love AI and I'm terrified of AI. So what I can tell you is that I've done a lot of work in the last 2 years to invest in AI and understanding it, and so now I have a pretty good resource of a bunch of things that work and things that don't work. But I think that agency owners and C-suite people have to understand that AI is a tool, and you have to understand how to use a tool the right way, right? So it is a way to help you research, to coordinate your thoughts, to save time on things, and doing it the right way. That's what you use it for, right? Research, coordinating your thoughts, and saving time on things. That to me, it shouldn't be the thing that replaces you. It should be the thing that empowers you. And so I think that a lot of people don't know how to do that. And I'll say that AI in particular has helped me, particularly with content strategy, certainly because it gives me a sounding board, and I've been able to train AI to talk in my voice. And so now I just ask it questions, the tools that I'm using, and now it pumps out content that's pretty much the way I talk, with less and less edits. And I love that because I've trained it. And so I think there's a bit of investment to understand how that works, but it can definitely save you a lot of time. I mean, another example of how I save time was uh, I had to put together a pitch or a proposal for a leadership development training program. And now that I've developed the AI tool to speak in my voice, I was able to generate, a 15-page proposal with directives and feedback mechanisms and appendices in literally like 3-4 hours. It was incredible. Normally it would take me 20 hours to do that. I couldn't believe how fast that was, and I loved it. So if you know how to do it right and you ask the right questions, it can transform your business. But you have to understand how to do it properly, and again, use it as the right vehicle and tool to support and amplify you and your business, as opposed to being sloppy with it, because there are ways to be sloppy with AI, and I think a lot of people don't take the time to really think about those things.
What's one final piece of advice that you would give to agency owners and business leaders who are actually navigating an increasingly competitive and digital world?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is ask for help, because the truth is we can't do it alone, and we cannot keep up with everything that's happening. It is virtually impossible to do that. So getting help from somebody to help you, figure that out and focus on where you want to spend your time and what to do, because you can't do everything. Like, marketing never ends, promotion never ends. And so it's more about, getting the help you need to leverage these tools like AI or social media or, strategies and things like that, to get a really good, third party look at what you're doing. Because, we're often blind to what we're doing. That's why I look at independent people and get their advice. But to me, that is probably the number one thing. And the second thing I'll say is that you have to keep learning. You have to keep learning and reading stuff and watching things and listening to your audience, because things change pretty fast. And so you have to be willing to, you might learn something that, might change your business, more than you realize. And it's funny, I was talking to my kids the other day about, careers and life and things like that. And the funny thing is, I told them that, I don't believe in the philosophy of what do you want to do with your life? Like, what job do you want? Because the job I'm doing now didn't exist when I was in high school, right? It didn't exist. And I firmly believe that many of the things that they think about, I mean, there's going to be some basic stuff too, like trades and, doctors, lawyers, whatever. But for the most part, there's going to be things that didn't exist. And I think that's just fascinating because so that's why keep learning and keep evolving, because that's how you stand out, particularly in the futurist world.
It was lovely chatting with you. You were so insightful. Appreciate that you expose your vulnerability, because I think that we don't find it that often. So it really does make you very unique. And it makes a lot of us feel like we can resonate with what you're saying and with the path that you are on. So thank you so much for your presence today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Kia.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune into our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the Designer Rush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.